Good morning, and once again, welcome everyone to the Gulf of Mexico Forum webinar. This is brought to you by NOAA's Gulf of Mexico Regional Collaboration Team, which is part of NOAA's Regional Collaboration Network. The reason why we exist is to help different parts of NOAA understand a little bit more about each other and what they do and partners. And I work on that in the Gulf of Mexico region and, help everybody learn a little more about each other and how they can work together. So thank you everyone for joining. I appreciate you all being here and joining in for this special session. Just a couple quick logistical items before we get going. Please note we are recording today's session. Participants will be joined to audio in mute status. Except for presenters, if you could please leave your webcam off, I'd appreciate it. That's really helpful for bandwidth for everyone. There is a comments or questions box, and I will be monitoring that during all of the presentations for written questions. We will have a couple breaks for Q&A. So after the first three presenters, there will be a short break for some Q&A. And then after the final three presenters, there will be another short break for Q&A, and then we'll open it up for general questions as well after that. So if you prefer to write in your questions, please use the question box. I will be watching it, and I will share your question. If you would rather ask a question verbally out loud, please select the raise your hand button during the Q&A to be unmuted, and I will see it and call your name and unmute you. So if you're not familiar with GoToWebinar, if you are calling in by phone like me, if you're on your phone, make sure that you enter your audio pin. It should be in the audio drop-down in your GoToWebinar panel. That allows me to mute and unmute you. If you do not have your audio pin entered, then I can't control your audio and you'll have to write in questions, unfortunately. Another thing, I mentioned raising your hand if you want to ask something verbally. That is also in your GoToWebinar dropdown. It is a little tiny side panel of icons, and it looks like a hand with an arrow pointing up on it. That will raise your hand, and when you have your hand raised, I see somebody testing it right now. When you have your hand raised, you can also lower it by clicking the same button. All right, so today's theme is social science applications for coastal resiliency. It was a course actually that was sponsored and put together in partnership through the NOAA Gulf of Mexico Regional Collaboration Team and the University of Alabama Center for Advanced Public Safety through the Northern Gulf Institute. And it was, actually, I don't want to tell too much because I'm sure I might be stealing some thunder from Dr. Myers there. So anyway, it just finished up. We had a bunch of participants and several of them will be talking about their projects today. So how this webinar will work, because we do have multiple speakers, we will have 5 minutes per speaker. And as I mentioned, there will be a couple breaks for questions. All right, so with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Myers with the University of Alabama Center for Advanced Public Safety. And Dr. Myers was the primary teacher for this class too. So Dr. Myers, I will make you the presenter.
Thank you, Chris.
Sure thing, thank you.
All right, so good morning, everyone. It's great to see everybody, and we're here this morning to talk about what we've been doing in this course. The course is the second run of a course that was originally developed a couple of years ago, and we delivered it to about 30 participants a couple of years ago.
Dr. Myers, just checking, I'm not seeing any slides. Did you have any visuals?
No.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you.
No problem, just talking. And so a few years ago, we did this course with about 30 participants, and those participants were learning about the human factor side of weather warning communication research. And there's been a lot of effort to combine human factors analysis, social science analysis in the weather warning communication process, and really in just about every hard science research process that you can think of, there is a human factor issue. And so we've expanded that to a variety of professionals, a variety of disciplines who want to understand how do you conduct human factors analysis with the particular research questions that they have about how humans respond and react to whatever phenomenon they're working on. And so that's what this course was about. We expanded it to a variety of professionals and showed them how they could integrate the human factors social science research into questions they were trying to answer about the work that they are doing. And so the course is all about the social science research methods process. How do you get the input from the human factor side that you need to help answer your questions? And so we talked through in the course about how you do that, what methodologies that you use to go with your research question, how do you design your study to get the answers that you're looking for, how do you do it in as an objective method as possible in regards to the objectivity of the research process, how do you handle the issues of research on humans, how do you make all of that work? And so we had a really good time going through all of that. We did the course virtually, which was not what we had planned to do. It was supposed to be in person, but of course COVID-19 affected that process and we did it virtually. And it worked very well. The whole virtual process was very interactive. We were able to work through all of the information we were trying to share on how you do human factors research. The goal of the course was for each student to develop a research project idea based on the work that they're doing and what they're interested in and what they need to know. And so the product of the course for each of the students was a research proposal to be able to go out and conduct their research. So by the end of the course, which has been, of course, virtual ever since we did our originally 1 week course about all the ways that you do this, they've been working for several months now virtually with our team here at the University of Alabama to develop their research idea and to come up with a proposal to conduct their research. And the intent is to go ahead and do that research. And they're going to be doing that in collaboration with the UA team. We're going to support that process, give them the feedback that they need to actually complete the research at their pace based on the work they're doing and what needs to happen to complete their research projects. So at the end of all of this, last week, we had a presentation by each of the students about their progress with their proposals. And it was amazing. It was just like it was the first time we taught this course. It was just amazing the work that the participants have been able to do to develop their research ideas into a proposal. And some of them have actually been able to get started on their data collection and are working toward that process. And so last week we got to hear all of the research proposal ideas and what they've done. And they've done all of that in collaboration with our team, with our feedback. And they've just done a really bang up job. It's just really, really amazing. And so Kristen asked if we would do this today and share with you some of what the students in the course have done. And I think you're going to find it very amazing in regards to their research questions, their designs. Some of them have actually started a little bit of data collection, and so you'll hear a little bit about that. But the goal today is for you to hear about what they've conceptualized, what they're going to do, and to hear about how they're integrating human factors analysis into their research question. So I'll turn it back to Kristen so she can start the process so you can hear each person's proposal.
Great, thank you so much, Laura, I appreciate it. All right, Jessica Few, you are first up, so I will make you the presenter now. Jessica is with the National Weather Service in Tallahassee, Florida. And I am making you the presenter.
Thank you. And you should be able to see my screen now.
Yep, I can see the first slide of your presentation.
Okay, perfect. So thank you, Kristen, and thank you also, Laura, for the two of you organizing the class and actually making it happen, and Laura and the rest of the folks that helped to teach it and everything. It was a great week. During the week, we came up with different ideas of what we wanted to do project-wise moving forward, And I came up with 3 different ideas, narrowed it down to 1. So I'm going to talk to you today about what I ended up going with, of what I'm going to focus with moving forward. And that's the tropical webpage that we've put together. So this was a webpage that was designed by meteorologists and information technology officers from Southern Region. Basically, back in 2015, 2016, we were switching over from an old content management system for the web to a new one. And so when we did that, we took away the ability to use PHP, one of the coding languages. And so basically what was going to happen is that each office was going to have to redesign their own tropical web page. And we said, well, why not put together a team and see if we can come up with a page that'll work across the board for Southern Region offices, so we can maximize the strengths of the various folks that are going to help with this and get the best people and resources working on this, but also take some of the workload off of every single office having to repeat this. So we went ahead, formed a team in 2016 to do this, and we implemented the page in 2017. So it's been live for 4 seasons now. When we did this, we also were trying to meet the need that we didn't have a way to present hurricane threats and impacts graphics to the public, and we wanted to include that on the page. And so it was an amazing team to work with, of folks that no matter what the problem was, even if you couldn't use a coding language, they found a way to make sure that we got the information out there to the public. So if you haven't seen the page, I'm going to drag it over to the screen so you can see what it looks like. Again, we developed this for the public so that they could obtain local impacts to their area. Don't be concerned now. This was from when we had Irma, and so it is from a previous season, not what it looks like now, but just to show you the test page so you can see more of what's on there, so you can understand a little bit more of the purpose behind this. And I said one of the things that we wanted to do is make sure that we had hurricane threats and impacts graphics displayed, and those are the ones that you see here on the screen. So again, we designed this page for the public to be able to get local information to their area. So a little bit more localized than what you would get from the National Hurricane Center page. This page, it started in Southern Region, it's expanded to Eastern Region, and actually in about 2 years, we're also going to be expanding it to Western Region as they adjust some of the tropical products that they do. So we went through all this work to put together this page, and you have to ask the question, is it useful? Are people using it? And is it useful? Is it meeting their needs? And so that's what's really behind this research proposal. We do know that people are using the page. To date this season, going back to June 1st, we've had over 1.3 million page views of the page. We've had plenty of tropical systems to test it out with this year and everything. So we know people are using the page. For folks that are staying on the page, they're averaging about 4 minutes on the page, which is a pretty long time. So are they finding the information that they need? Is it taking them a long time to find that information? We want to answer those questions. So a variety of questions have come up. Is the information on the page that people need to determine what are the impacts for their area? Is the information on the page to help people determine what their action needs to be? Not just getting supplies, but do I need to stay? Do I need to go? What do I need to do? So what's the appropriate action? Can they figure that out from the page? Is there too much information on the page? And I think that's one of the greatest challenges, is it's easy to put the information on the page, but is it too much that people are overwhelmed and maybe it makes it harder to find the information? So based on all this, I came up with the research question of what web-based information and format of information do members of the public need to determine the impacts for their location, and what actions need to be taken to protect themselves during a tropical cyclone. So moving forward in the plan, I see it as a 3-part plan. So let's, 1, take a look at the current research that's out there. Is there research that already tells us what information needs to be on the page for people to determine what are their impacts and what actions do they need to take if there's a tropical cyclone? Hopefully that research is already done and we can harness that. Then let's take that, apply it to the information that's on the tropical webpage right now, and determine, is there information that we need to add to the page, or is there information that we need to actually take off the page that doesn't need to be there and might be detracting from the message? And then finally, it's not just about the information that's on the page, but where I see a huge part of this project is really in step 3, where we're looking at, can users navigate the page and find the information quickly and in a way that they can interpret. So again, a 3-part plan moving forward, and really excited to delve more into this and make sure that what we've created is something that is serving and meeting the public's needs. So Kristen, I will pass it back to you.
Great, thank you so much, Jessica. That sounds like a really neat project. All right, Dan, I see you on visual there. I am going to make you the presenter now. Dan is with the Assessment and Restoration Division of the Southeast Region for the Office of Response and Restoration.
Thanks, everybody. What do people know about the deep pelagic Gulf of Mexico? It's been said that we know more about the surface of the moon and Mars than we do about the deep sea floor. And we know even less about the pelagic deep sea. What most people think of when they think of the term pelagic, if they know what pelagic means, is things like this: tunas swimming around at the surface in the deep blue waters. But the surface is but a small fraction of the Gulf of Mexico. So let's go deep and take a look. More than 90% of the Gulf of Mexico is deep waters, below 200 meters. So that superficial layer is less than 10% of the pelagic zone. During the 2010 time period, the Deepwater Horizon wellhead blew out. Sorry, the MC-252 wellhead blew out while the Deepwater Horizon was drilling it. And this sent a lot of oil deep into the waters of the Gulf of Mexico. Application of subsurface dispersants may have further exacerbated the amount of oil that went into the deep waters. As the strategy advisor for the offshore injury assessment, I needed to work on how we were going to address the injuries to these deep communities. And we collected a huge amount of information during that natural resource damage assessment. And then subsequently during GOMRI, Gulf of Mexico Research Initiative, deep end work, follow-up work on that. In total, almost 900 species of fish were collected in these deep waters. Hundreds of new records to the Gulf of Mexico, and even a couple of dozen new species. In total, if you include all of the invertebrates, the squids, the gelatinous zooplankton, and the crustaceans, we're looking at over 1,400 species collected from the midwaters of the Gulf of Mexico. This makes the Gulf of Mexico one of the most diverse oceanic ecosystems in the world. So if scientists are still learning a lot, what does the public know? And that's the project that I am undertaking. So I want to conduct surveys to find out what people know about the deep pelagic. Follow that with focus groups to further explore what people know and determine how people would like to get information on the deep pelagic. And then use these results ultimately as a guide for communication about the deep sea. So how can we generate interest in protecting and understanding the deep sea? So the first part of this is the survey. And the survey instrument is going to be in 3 basic categories. So basic knowledge of the physical and biological characteristics, the knowledge and feelings about the importance of the pelagic deep sea and the potential for humans to impact the pelagic deep sea, and then self-reporting of knowledge of other habitat types. And that's going to be included so that I can get an understanding of whether people generally know more about nature, or whether the deep sea itself is a piece that's lacking in understanding. Of course, demographic questions will be included so that we can look at geographic, age, and other factors to determine what people know. Some additional potential questions are going to relate to where people get their information, and this will really help with the outreach portion. And then I have a personal interest in understanding whether people that tend to spend more time outdoors also generally know more about natural systems. And so I may query on other activities that people undertake and what that has to do with their knowledge of the deep sea. The target audience for this is initially going to be the Gulf state residents, both coastal and inland. So while coastal people may see the ocean more frequently than their inland counterparts, nobody has access to this deep sea environment that we're talking about. It's as inaccessible as outer space. There's the potential to expand this survey more broadly, more globally, to look at not just the Gulf of Mexico, but knowledge throughout the world about the deep sea. So my next steps are to complete the survey questions and get it into Qualtrics, test the survey instrument, implement the survey, analyze these results, and from those results, start focus groups to further explore what people know and understand better how people want to receive their information. And ideally, then we can implement some of what we've learned as we continue to collect data on the deep Gulf of Mexico through a Restore Act grant that will go through 2025 and ideally through about 2030. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate it. All right, we're at our first question break point. So if you have any questions, please feel free to either put them into the chat or the question box, or raise your hand and I will unmute you. And this question break is for our preceding speakers, so Laura Myers, Jessica Few, and Dan Hahn. All right, looking for hands raised. And it's just amazing to see the different applications that are being used just even so far. All right, I'm not seeing any hands raised, and I am not seeing any questions in the box. So we'll give it another second or so.
And I guess I would just add then, if we don't have any questions coming in,
Feel free.
if you have any suggestions or additions on survey questions, please give me a shout, daniel.hahn@noaa.gov, and I'd be happy to have any input on how to make this survey better.
And that's a great point, Dan. I'll be sure to share out everybody's email address to the attendees afterwards too. All right, I am not seeing any hands raised, and I do not see any questions. So we will move on to our next set of speakers. Andy, you are up.
All right.
So I will make you presenter. I see you. And presenter. Andy is with the National Academy's Gulf Research Program, and through that with the Restore Science Program.
All right. Kristen,
Andy?
do you see the correct screen or do we need to swap them again?
Please swap them. We're seeing the presenter view.
Okay.
And now we're seeing the correct view. Thank you.
Great. All right. All right. So yes, today I will be talking about best practices learned from a highly adopted research product and how grant managers can apply them. So like Kristen just said, I am a National Academies of Sciences Gulf Research Program Science Policy Fellow working for the NOAA Restore Science Program. The science program is a grant program in the Gulf of Mexico, spending a portion of the BP oil spill settlement dollars. And the science program is interested in funding actionable science. So that means science that assists natural resource management decision making. The tool we're talking about today is a sea level rise decision support tool for Southwest Florida. Here's the layout of the brief presentation I'll be giving today. I'll discuss my hypotheses, my methods, and finally my results. I have 3 hypotheses formulated from scientific literature. They are more communication with end users, more contribution to tool development, and favorable public policies will increase the likelihood of tool adoption. To test these hypotheses, I created this survey. This survey has 8 questions, and each of these questions has 0 to 3 follow-up questions. The first question gets participants thinking about the sea level rise tool, and there's also an opt-out option in this question in case if they're unfamiliar with the tool, which should not be the case because we spoke with the principal investigator and he helped us identify these end users. Question 2 acts as the dependent variable. This is what's being tested. It is influenced by questions 3 through 7. And question 2 gauges the level of adoption from low level of adoption to high level of adoption towards the bottom of the list. Questions 3 through 4 are affiliated with the first hypothesis regarding communication, and questions 5 and 6 are affiliated with the second hypothesis regarding contribution to the tool, and question 7 is affiliated with the third hypothesis about favorable policies assisting the adoption of the tool. And the final question, question 8, is a catch-all question asking participants if there's anything that we may have neglected to ask about. 9 of the 12 identified end users responded to the survey. 5 of them fully completed the survey. 4 of them only partially completed it. And the graph on the right shows the responses to question number 2, which again is the dependent variable. 4 of the 9 did not answer question 2. Another 4 of the 9 said that their office has not yet used it for a management decision, but they plan to. And 1 of the 9 said they have used it for a management decision, but they have not incorporated it into the operation plan. The highest level of adoption, which no one selected, was we have used it to make a management decision and we have incorporated it into our operation plan. Nobody chose that option. So here is one of my data tables. This is really the meat of the analysis here. Notice that I maintained the same color coding from the previous slide for those responses to question number 2. 5 of the 9 respondents indicated that their office adopted or plans to adopt the tool. All 5 of these so-called adopters said they contributed to the design of the tool, affiliated with question 5. We're looking at that Q5 column. And 4 of the 5 evaluated the outputs, and this is that Q6 column. The 5 adopters all received 2 or more demonstrations of the tool, question number 3, while the other 4 had 1 demonstration or did not specify. These data seem to suggest that the number of demonstrations and contribution to an evaluation of the tool may increase tool adoption, perhaps more so than communication and policies, which are questions number 4 and questions number 7. Not all of the adopters had frequent communication with the project team. 1 of them indicated he had infrequent communication with the project team. Only 3 of the 5 adopters said their office has policies that support the adoption of the tool. This analysis is still ongoing. One of my next steps is to dig into the follow-up questions for questions 3 through 7. And that's all I've got. Let's see. There we go. All right, thanks for listening. And let me know if you have any questions or suggestions.
Great. Thank you so much, Andy. I appreciate it. All right, Latrice, you are up next. I am going to make you the presenter now.
Did I stop sharing?
Nope, we can still see your background.
Should I click this X?
Here, I think it'll just move it over to Latrice automatically. It looks like it does.
Good, okay.
All right, and Latrice, we are seeing your presentation view now. Thank you. We seem to be on mute. Hang on.
Sorry, yes.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay.
And Latrice is with the National Weather Service in Jackson, Mississippi. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that before.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Latrice Maxey. And today I'm going to talk about my project, which relates to seeing how the public uses Weather Service forecast products in Central Mississippi. The Jackson Forecast Office, basically the Mississippi counties that they cover. And this is the reason that I chose this project, mainly because we get weather any time of the year. Mississippi is in an area that is that gets lots of tornadoes each year. We're in something called Dixie Alley that a lot of people may or may not be familiar with. Most people are familiar with the Tornado Alley. And at one time, one of the counties that is in our County 1 area actually was most likely to get a tornado than any other place in the country. On average, each year, about 8 people die in tornadoes, and that's statewide. But just in this year alone, in the 2 tornado events in April, we had 11 people to die just in our County 1 area. And so the Weather Service provides lots of information to the public about safety. We provide forecast information and outlooks that give people information on what's to be expected and what type of weather may happen. But as far as like a safety and a training perspective, a lot of the information that we provide goes to like specialized groups. Like we do a lot of school talks to try to capture the young people. And then we do spotter training, which is open to the public, but a fair amount of the people who participate in the spotter training are weather enthusiasts. So the average person, you know, doesn't necessarily get targeted training in terms of how to stay safe in a severe weather event. And the Weather Service has launched this Weather Ready Nation campaign that's designed to try to get more community-based involvement. Just from what I've seen, just in our area, we get, you know, other, you know, businesses and groups involved, but a fair amount of what they do relates to just sharing the Weather Service information. We haven't yet been able to tap into those groups to help us bring in the community so that we can do more training for average people on how to stay safe in severe weather events. And so I would like to propose a more grassroots approach to education and training as it relates to weather safety, basically. And I'm hoping that this project will help us maybe take some new approaches to our outreach efforts and really target the general public, maintaining our same safety for, you know, school groups and the spotter training, but also add a little more that will help the general public. So basically what I would like to do is survey the public, try to do a survey where I can hopefully, you know, get at least 200 responses, and possibly do a focus group to maybe get a little more details, try to get a more intimate setting and maybe get a little more insight on how people actually respond to weather. We know that people have different resources. We have some generational issues that come up in terms of how people receive information. and the people who are often hurt or killed in these severe weather events are often elderly people, because we have, weather at different times of the day. People who don't have multiple ways to receive information, often have issues. And so we would really want to focus on how people receive weather information, and basically what they do with it when they receive it. Like, how do they actually act? Not necessarily what their generic response would be, but what is their actual plan, and how do they respond when they get that information, and are they using the Weather Service products to prepare and to stay safe and in an average severe weather event. So I have done a little bit of research, a little bit of literature review, and a fair amount of the research that's out there focuses on people's perception of Weather Service products, if they're useful, if they had a warning, whether the warning was on time, if they got the warning at all. Some, deal with whether or not people understand their risk. And some of it is based on how they respond to weather, but a lot of it focuses on two events that happen like back to back. And they don't necessarily look at people who routinely receive weather and whether or not they are taking it seriously, even though they get it all the time, or it's because they haven't directly been impacted, whether or not that experience, helps them stay safe in an event. And a fair amount of the research is also 2010 or older. There have been a significant number of events since 2010, and it would really be nice to try to tap into to people who have had experiences with violent events, widespread damage, multiple events that were widespread with significant events and damage, to see if they have paid more attention to the weather, looked at the Weather Service products, at their forecast information, and use that information to help keep themselves safe. Because I haven't found specific studies on what the information that I'm looking for, I may have to adjust how I search to see if I can get more information. It's possible that I'm just missing the newer stuff and the stuff that is focusing on what I'm trying to find. So this is based on some feedback that we received last week. Dr. Myers mentioned that we did present to the group. So I will likely focus specifically on tornadoes, and then possibly in the future look at some other severe weather events, but focusing on tornadoes because we have a lot of data on tornadoes and how they impact people. Also partnering with some social service groups, because I really want to tap into the elderly community to find out what they're doing and how they're responding. Again, I want to do a survey, so I'm not sure the best method for capturing 200 people, again, because I want to get the elderly involved. Doing an online survey might not be the best approach, so I might have to do some actual manual, maybe not necessarily face-to-face, but handing out flyers to try to get people to respond to a paper survey. And then I was hoping to try to get this done by the spring, but it's unlikely that that'll happen. So making some adjustments and trying to capture the best groups that can help me get the survey out there and get the best information in order to get this survey completed. So that's kind of it.
Great. Thank you so much, Latrice. And, speaking of someone who was born in Kansas, I think that's a really, really interesting project. So,
okay.
And yeah, y'all get a lot of tornadoes in your area.
Yes.
Very much appreciate that work. All right. Caitlin, you are up next. I will switch the presenter over to you. Making you the presenter. And Caitlin Wessel is with the Marine Debris Program for the Gulf of Mexico in the Office of Response and Restoration. We are currently seeing your laptop or desktop background. All right, it looks like we are seeing the correct view of your presentation now.
Okay, great, thank you. So
Sure.
I am interested in the response to debris caused by hurricanes because hurricanes have the potential to release enormous amounts of marine debris into the environment during a single pulse event. This 2020 hurricane season, as I'm sure you all know, has been unprecedented, but especially along the Gulf Coast where we've seen 8 named storms make landfall so far this year. Unfortunately, the removal of storm-generated debris requires a huge influx of both money and resources and can be very time-consuming. And rarely is it a top priority immediately following the disaster. There can also be confusion as to whom is responsible for debris removal, with overlapping jurisdictions and complex environmental conditions to deal with. So this issue led the NOAA Marine Debris Program to develop marine debris response guides. We had lots of help from all of our partners doing this. It was not a solo project. And what this does is outline existing response structures, procedures, and responsibilities at the local, state, and federal levels to create individual state guidance documents. So this allows communities and responders to find all of the information needed to respond to debris after a storm in one location. It serves as a complete reference for all marine debris response after a lot of the information is relevant farther inland as well. A large portion of the guide is dedicated to organizational roles and responsibilities. We also include details on permitting and compliance requirements, and then also contact information for organizations and individuals that have a response or compliance role during cleanup. All 5 of the Gulf states have developed between 2014 and 2018. Texas and Florida used their guides in 2018 following Hurricanes Harvey and Irma. But until this year, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama have not had to use their guide during an actual response. So this extremely active hurricane season has left me with the opportunity to get feedback from responders in these states that are actually working active hurricane and debris response work this year. And so the overarching question for my social science project is, are the marine debris response guides having a positive impact on marine debris removals after a natural disaster? And this study will assess who is using the guides, how they're being used, are the guides improving the efficiency and the amounts of marine debris that's being removed after a storm, and can the guides be improved to make them more useful? And so these questions will be answered through a various analysis using existing data sources, and then also doing surveys of coastal, federal, state, and local debris responders. So I'm planning on the project consisting of 3 parts. The first part is the survey that I mentioned, and we'll send that survey out to all of the debris responders and local communities in both Louisiana and Alabama that were impacted by Hurricanes Laura, Sally, Delta, and Zeta. And the purpose of this survey is to determine people's awareness of the guide and also the guide's usefulness. I'd also like to find out if there are ways we can make it more useful for folks during a disaster. And I'm hoping to have both FEMA and the state EMAs help to share that survey out to make sure that it's getting to everyone that could potentially need to use the guide during a response. The second step, which I am already working on, is to analyze the challenges identified during state debris workshops and determine if there's anything that NOAA can do to help address or eliminate any of those challenges. And then the final step, which I'm currently exploring to see what sources of data exist out there, is looking at the total amounts of debris created by a hurricane, how much of that debris actually gets removed and how long it takes, and see if that improves or changes once states have guides and have them to use. And I'll be working on this project over the next 6 months. And then in the fall, as we are updates guides, I hope to include any of the improvements that are suggested as a result of this project into those guide edits to make them more useful to responders after a disaster. And if you are not familiar with the marine debris emergency guides and you are interested in learning more about them, you can find them on the marinedebris.noaa.gov website under emergency response. And the direct link is also on your screen. And that's all I've got.
Great. Thank you so much, Caitlin. All right, we are now at our second question break for our second set of speakers. So if anyone has questions for Andy or Latrice or Caitlin, please feel free to put them into the chat or question box, or raise your hand on the little side screen and I will unmute you. While we're waiting, hey Andy, I did have a question for you actually.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Great. I was wondering, it was an interesting tidbit that you found so far about the importance of demonstrations to the tools actually getting used. Do you think that applies to other tools as well?
Probably. I did, having only looked at one tool, I think it's hard to say if it applies to all tools. But just if I was to conjecture, I would say, probably so.
Makes sense.
Sorry. I don't have much more to say than that.
That's quite all right. It was a conjecture type question anyway. It's all good.
Yeah.
All right.
I appreciate the effort to stimulate some discussion, though.
Oh, certainly. Certainly. All right. I'm not currently seeing any hands raised. And I am not seeing any questions in the question box at the moment either. Oh, yes, actually I do. I have a question for Latrice, actually. This is from Caitlin Young. And the question is, how do you think COVID will impact your ability to collect data from the elderly population?
To be honest, I'm really not sure. I didn't necessarily intend to do any physical surveys. I just maybe wanted to do some flyers, hand them out with a link. A fair amount of people use the internet. They may not, it just may not be their primary source for weather information. And if you send them a survey monkey or something like that, they may be less likely to respond to it, but maybe giving them some background information that they can read and then possibly letting them go to the link in that way, or using those social services to possibly pass the survey out for me without me having to necessarily come into contact with them. Or I hadn't considered door to door, just kind of leaving a survey on somebody's door and hoping they would respond and maybe leave it back outside for me or something. I hadn't really thought that far, but I didn't necessarily intend to do any physical contact with anybody. It would have just been possibly giving them a flyer or something that they could respond to, and then maybe I collected it later or somebody else collected it.
Makes sense. Yeah, and I was thinking while you're speaking just now that perhaps community centers or places, rec centers that have that do a lot of work with the elderly might also be a good place. Just even put a stack of them at the front desk. Right.
That's definitely a great idea.
Yep. And Latrice, you're popular in the question box, so stay on verbal. All right. Next question is from. Oops. Hang on. Lost my question box. Sorry about that. All right, next question is also for you, Latrice. It's from Tracy Sempier. Tracy is interested in knowing more about your survey, and I have her contact information, so I can share that with you afterwards as well.
Okay.
Tracy is just starting a position with NSSL, the National Severe Storms Laboratory, which is based in Norman, Oklahoma. Tracy is in Mississippi, though, and under the Vortex Southeast program. We have been having similar conversations about reaching people at the neighborhood level. So she's just interested in what you're doing. Oh, it got to continue. Okay, sorry about that. Tracy says it would be great if y'all could coordinate, and they've been talking about targeting people in mobile and manufactured homes as well. So I think you have a research partner there.
Yeah, a great group to reach, just because Mississippi has one of the highest mobile home occupancy rates, I guess, in the country. So that would be a great group to kind of tap into also. So yes, definitely share my information works.
Will do. Will do. Okay, let's see here. All right, I am not seeing any hands raised. So. Oh, go ahead.
Just to follow up with my earlier response about the demonstrations, the literature did say that early and frequent collaboration with end users leads to better decisions in general. So I didn't see a lot of specific mentions of demonstrations, but there were a lot of mentions of collaboration with end users being beneficial for the final decision. So I think that does speak to your question, and more demonstrations probably are better.
That makes sense. Thank you for adding that in, Andy.
Sure.
All right. Checking once again for hands raised. Do not see any hands raised. All right. Hey, Caitlin, just a quick question for you as well. How are the guides shared out and publicized currently?
So right now, they're all available on our website, and then we also communicate with local response agencies, U.S. Coast Guard, FEMA, Army Corps, and then also the state EMA agency, or in Louisiana, GOSEP.
Great. All right. I am not seeing further hands, and it looks like the questions have quieted down. So I just want to thank everybody for joining. I would like to thank all of our speakers. Really, really interesting to hear about what everybody's doing, Jessica and Dan and Andy and Latrice and Caitlin. Once again, we'll be sharing the email contact information for our speakers today out with the attendees. And Dr. Myers, I want to say a special thank you to you for partnering with the Gulf of Mexico Regional Collaboration Team and the Northern Gulf Institute to organize and teach this course. I know it was an adventure going from something that was planned to be in person to entirely virtual, and we had to change the schedule and everything for it. And I just want to thank you for helping to provide this course and pulling it all together and sticking with us through all of these changes.
You're welcome, and it was a pleasure to do it. This was a great group of participants, and they worked really hard through all the virtual issues, as well as a massive hurricane season that interfered with their time. And so everybody was very dedicated and committed to it, and you can see that in the work that they've done. And we look forward to continuing to work with all of them. And for everybody that's in the audience today, if you have an interest in this, these folks, are really good brains to pick about, what this is about and what they learned. And I think, kind of forming a network of people, like Tracy just, tapped in about Latrice's work. I think a lot of people out there are interested in the same questions that these people have and the work that they're doing, and you guys may be doing similar stuff out there yourselves. So we hope to build that network of people who are interested in this kind of research. And so don't hesitate to make contact with us here at UA, and as well as the participants in the course if we can be of any help.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And yes, definitely just really amazing to see what everybody's working on and the excitement of the course participants in the projects. So once again, thank you, everybody. Our next scheduled Gulf of Mexico Forum webinar will be on December 10th. It will be at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central. And our presenter for that one will be Amy Clark. She is the Education Coordinator for the NOAA Fisheries Southeast Regional Office. And she's going to be talking about the Bay Watershed Education Training Program, or BWET, in the Gulf of Mexico region. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining, and thank you to our speakers. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you next time.